Today, we're going to try and recreate the classic game Pong. Now, this was a training exercise for one of the co-founders of Atari, but the training exercise turned out so well they decided to actually manufacture the game. And if we look down here, we can see the gameplay, and you've got a paddle on each side and a ball, and you just have to knock it back, and then we have the scores here. So let's mock up what this would look like, and then we can start coding. So we're going to need our canvas size. I'm going to make it 1200 pixels wide by 700 pixels high. That seems good. Our paddles. And now we want to start them in the middle of the screen, which would be at 350 pixels. But remember, it's the bottom left corner that is the X value. So that means if we make our paddles, say, 100 pixels high, then we want 50 pixels below that 350. So this bottom left hand corner would be at 300. Okay, that's 300 high. That's the Y value. All right, and then the ball would start in the center of the screen, which would be 600 pixels across and 350 pixels high, because with a ball, we measure the X and Y with the center. All right, I think we're good to go. Let's start coding. So I'm going to go over here and choose create a new sketch. I'm going to rename it to Pong and click update title. All right. Now the first thing I'm going to do is import the sprite library. So from sprite import star. And while I'm importing some libraries, I'm going to import the randint function from random import randint, because I know I'm going to need that later. All right, let's set the canvas size. We said it's going to be 1200 wide by 700 high. And now let's start creating the first player one's paddle. So I'll call it player one, and player one equals a rectangle sprite, and we will make that, as we said, 10 pixels in from the edge. We'll make it 300 pixels high, so 300. We'll make it 10 pixels wide and 100 pixels high. All right, now that just creates that in memory. To draw it, we need our animation loop. So let's say here, animation loop. I'm going to start that by creating a Boolean variable, setting it to true, and then while playing. So this loop will continue as long as this Boolean is set to true. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is clear the background, a nice dark gray color. And then now I can draw the paddle. So player one dot draw, and just down here I'll sleep for 1/60th of a second. And now let's see what that does. All right, there we go. Nice. There's our paddle, and it looks pretty good. All right. Let's see if we can make that paddle move now. So. All right, what we're going to do before we draw it, we're going to check if we've hit some of the keys. So we can go if is key pressed. Player one, we can use the maybe the W and the S keys. So key W will mean they want to go up. So we will say player one dot move by, and let's create a speed here. So player one dot speed equals, let's make it 3 at the moment. So we've just created this attribute of the player one thing. So move by 0 left or right, and player one dot speed, which is set to 3. And if they press the key S, then they want to move down. So we will do player one dot move by, and this time we'll move at 0 left or right again, but by minus player one speed. All right, now let's have a look at that. Yeah, minus player one speed. Sorry, I just had that there. So that player one speed, we can change that once at the top, and it'll change it for both key presses. That's why I created that variable. Let's test it out. Start, and I can move up and I can move down. Awesome. All right, let's do the same for player two now. So I'm just going to copy both of these, and I'm going to create player 2. Player 2 though, instead of 10 across, I want the paddle is 10 pixels wide, and then I want another 10 pixel gap before there, so I want it 20 pixels less than the width of the screen. So 20 pixels less than the width of the screen. Okay, so for this, let's go the width of the screen minus 20, and then all these others should be the same. 300 high, 10 wide, 10 wide and 100 high, the paddle. Cool. And then player 2 speed, yeah, let's set it to the same speed. Don't want to give player 1 or 2 an advantage. And so we can now copy these lines of code because we need the same. But for player 2, I'm going to do key up and key down. And we are going to just move player 2 by player 2.speed. And same here, player 2 by player 2.speed. And let's draw player 2. All right. And let's see what we have now. Great, and they can move up or down. Oh, this is going so well. All right, now I'm going to create the ball. So let's check it out. The ball is equal to a circle sprite this time, and we had the coordinates of that. It's 600, 350. 600, 350. And we need to specify a radius here. How big the ball is basically, but the radius of it. Let's try 10 to start with and see what that looks like. Now we can, let's give that a speed as well. So ball dot, but this time I need like the ball's not moving in one direction. The ball can move up and across. So I need an X and a Y. So let's see, ball dot dx equals, and maybe we'll just pick a random integer. You know what? I think that's too much, because if it's, we want a finer thing. We want sometimes the ball not to go too wide. So I think we need to have not a whole number, but decimals in here. So it means we need the uniform function. And let's try between -1 and 1. So that could pick minus 0.6 or positive 0.325. Anything between -1 and 1. And then the same for the dy. So the change in the y. -1 and 1. But that means up here we need to import the random function, or just the uniform function. I don't think we're actually using the randin. Okay, let's do that. And now we can say ball.move by ball.dx and ball.dy, and then ball.draw, and now we should be in business. Let's check it out. All right, yeah, there we go, and the ball's coming straight down the screen. Oh dear. So the X, I actually need that to be moving quite a bit. I can't have a low number for X because I want it to be moving quite, so dx should just start quite fast and maybe not be a random number. All right, let's try and fix that. So the ball.dx, let's just set that to be like 5 and see what that happens. And then the y, how much it's going up or down, is a random number. So yeah, that's looking like it's working well, but notice there's no collision detection, so the ball just goes straight past. So we need some collision detection here. Okay, so let's check if the ball is hitting our paddle. So if the ball dot overlaps with player 1, or the ball dot overlaps with player 2, if either of those things are true, then we want the ball.dx to be times by -1. So that will switch the direction of the dx. If it was -1, it'll become +1. If it was +1, it will become -1. All right, let's try it. Yes. All right, this is exciting. We've basically got a version of Pong working already. I think that when it hits our bat though, we want the oh, and look, the ball's just gone off the top of the screen. So a couple of problems there. All right, let's look at those problems. Okay, so when the ball collides with the bat, we want to change the dy, how much is going up or down, and then if it hits the top of the screen, we want it to bounce off. So then we want to change the dy, and same if it hits the bottom, we want to invert the dy. So this is check if we hit a paddle, and then here I want to oh yeah, and if we hit the paddle, that's when we want to change the dy. So ball.dy equals another random number between -1 and 1. So let's just try that. So now it should change. Yes, different angle. And yeah, excellent. Now we could make that angle even more extreme if we wanted to. You can play around with that later. So this -1 and 1, you change those and it would bounce off at more extreme angles. But now let's check if let's check if the ball hits the top or bottom. So if ball.y, that's what I want to check. Let's do the bottom first. So if the ball.y is less than the ball.radius, and the reason I did that was because if it's hitting the screen, the center of the circle, as you can see there, will be above that line by the radius of the ball. So that's why that check. And in the top, the center of the ball will be below the height of the screen by the ball.radius. So it's the height minus the ball.radius. So, or the ball.y is greater than the height of the screen minus the ball.radius. Now, if that is true, then we want to say the ball.dy is multiplied by -1. All right, let's try. I'm excited. All right. Yes. And then, you know what? I'm going to have to make those values more extreme, otherwise we're never going to get it to see it hit the bottom. Let's do a value between, let's try -3 and 3. And then let's see what happens. Oh yeah. Yes, bounced off the top. All right. Okay, come on. Got to check if it bounces off the bottom. Oh no, I missed it. And the game's still going, but the ball's just continuing to go past. So that's something we've got to fix up. Okay. All right, here we go. Here's our chance. Oh yes, it bounced off the bottom. All right, that's working. All right, cool. So let's now check what happens if the ball goes off the bottom of the screen. So check if we miss the ball. Now, if we miss the ball, we really want to award a point to the other person. So we need to keep track of that. So let's up here, let's create a player1.score and set that equal to 0. And let's create a player2.score and set that equal to 0. And then down here, if the ball.x is less than minus the ball.radius, then player2 actually gets a point. So player2.score plus equals 1. And how did I know it was minus ball.radius? Again, if the ball.y was 0, it would be here, but I want the ball to be totally off the screen, so it's less than 0 by the ball.radius, so minus ball.radius. And then for player 1 to get a point, I want the ball to be totally off, which means the center of the circle is past the width by the ball.radius. So it should be width plus ball.radius. So if ball.x is greater than the width of the screen plus the ball.radius, then player1.score plus equals 1. and let's write that, let's display the scores. Display the scores. So I'm going to set the fill here to be like a light grey colour. So maybe 200, 200, 200. And then let's go text. Player1.score. And the position of the score, let's check it out. 600 would be the middle, so we want it around about the 300 and the 900. But remember, the text, it specifies the bottom left hand corner, so I want to maybe make it 25 pixels less than those numbers. So let's go with 275. So 275 across, and let's put them near the top of the screen. So maybe the height of the screen minus 60, and we want the font size to be 50 pixels. And then we'll put in the player 2.score, and it will be 875 across, and same thing, height minus 60 and 50 pixels in size. All right, let's try it. All right, there we go. There's the scores. And if it goes past, oh, look, I'm just winning so much. So we almost want to reset the ball back to the start, don't we? Yeah. So let's do that. So ball.move to the start again. So remember, when we created the ball, we set it to 600, 350. So let's put it back to there. 600, 350. And let's also change the direction. So it's going the other way. So ball dot dx times equals -1. And let's do a random y as well. Set the dy to a random one, unit one between -3 and 3. All right, cool. And we want to do the same thing here if the other person scores. All right, let's see. This game is nearly done. Oh, here we go. Oh, great. Let me just check if this works here. So, yep, one. Oh, it didn't move it back. Oh, that one put it to the center. Okay, so maybe you saw what I did wrong, but here I didn't copy the move to. So move it back to there. All right, let's see. So I'll get out of the way. 1 point to me, 1 point to them. All right, bouncing off the top of the screen. All right, this is pretty good. All right, maybe now we can stop the game at a certain point. Let's see. So playing equals true. We can just set this to false if the score has reached a certain amount. So let's just check for the end of the game. So if player1.score is greater than, let's say he's got to get to 5, or player2.score is greater than 5, or let's say greater than 4, because then I'll get to, then the score will be 5. If that's true, then playing equals false. All right. So then the game will finish, and what we can do is we can just, this loop will finish, so we can just do an if player1.score is greater than player2.score, then we can say, let's just make sure the fill color is still that grey color, and then we'll text and say player one wins, and we'll put that somewhere near the middle. Let's make it maybe, yeah, let's try the 300 pixels across, 300 pixels up, and make it 100 pixels in size, the font size. Else then player 2 must have won. So I can do this fill outside of this if statement, because I always want to make sure it's that color for either of the text commands, and I'll do the same thing here, but it'll be player 2 wins. All right, let's test that out. So I want to bounce it out. Let's get player 1 to win first. All right. And now let's check if player 2 can win. Player 2 wins. All right. Excellent. All right. There's one thing I want to do now. All games are so much better when they have sound effects. So let's add those sound effects now. So in the asset library, under sounds, we can find some good ones. Let's try it. Yeah, that blip's a good one. Let's take that. So we copy this file name, we head back over here, and let's put sounds, and we'll call it hit equals load sound, and I'm going to paste in this file name here, and then whenever we want to play that sound, we just call the function play sound. So let's do it if we hit it. So if the ball overlaps, either of these happens, then we can say play sound hit. And then I want to do a different sound for when it hits the walls. So let's use this hit.wav. Interestingly, I've changed them different. Let's call this one, let's use hit for that one, and blip equals load sound, and blip. All right, so we've got hit and blip, and I'm going to play sound blip if it's the top or the bottom of the wall, so a different sound, blip. And then if we miss the ball, that's when we're going to play one of those crashing sounds. So yeah, that's a good one, collision. So let's load that. So I'm going to say scored equals load sound. Great. And then when they score, play sound scored. And I need to also do that there. And then maybe at the end of the game, I can have a really cool little sound. Let's try that. Yeah, this success one. So game over equals load sound. Paste that in, and then when we finish, I'm going to say play sound. Game over, say who wins, and because it goes for about 6 seconds, that bit of music, I'm just going to sleep for 6 seconds. All right, let's try it. Yes. Yep. I do want to switch those over though. I don't like those. I prefer the different sounds for the different things. So, no, it doesn't really matter, but I'm a bit pedantic. So what I'm going to do is the hit and the blip, I'm going to switch them around. So here I'm going to say play the hit sound, and here I'm going to say play the blip sound. Yeah, that's much better. And if I miss, yeah, all right, great. And let's get to the game over screen. Brilliant. All right. Hope you've enjoyed this. There's some more things you could do. You could make the ball come off at different angles depending on how the panel's moving. You could maybe make it so that the ball doesn't immediately start when we start the game, like someone's got to hit enter to serve the ball, for example. You know, the old game was black and white, but you could add color. Yeah, lots of things you could do. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.